Coming up on Jerusalem Dateline, Netanyahu prepares to forge ahead with judicial reform despite intense opposition. Plus, is a new nuclear deal between the U.S. and Iran on the horizon? Why experts are warning Washington to get tough before it's too late. And Rabbi D shares how his family is rebuilding after terrorists murdered his wife and 2 daughters. And in the Negev, ambitious plans for a high-tech corridor promise to transform the region. All this and more on this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Julie Stahl. 6 months into the battle over judicial reform in Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu plans to press ahead despite growing protests. Take a look. Prime Minister Netanyahu says a large majority of the public understands the need for reforms. At the weekly cabinet meeting, he told government leaders they would begin this week to take practical steps in making those changes.
We'll do them in a measured way, responsibly, but in accordance with the mandate we received to make corrections to the justice system.
The announcement follows a decision by opposition leaders to suspend talks on judicial reforms happening at the president's residence for 30 days. Opposition leader Yair Lapid says they will continue to fight the legal overhaul and stop it.
Netanyahu's announcement that he intends to advance the coup unilaterally will critically harm the economy, will endanger security, and tear the Israeli people to shreds.
Leaders of those protesting the reforms in Tel Aviv warn they will also ramp up their activities.
They are able to pass these laws whenever they want to. They have the majority in the parliament. And we are here to make sure those laws remain in the trash bin of history.
And that's a problem, according to Alex Trayman of the Jewish News Syndicate. Trayman says the first 2 reforms Netanyahu wants to make are not so dramatic.
Right now, the Supreme Court can overturn a law on the basis of what it calls reasonableness. So the Knesset wants to legislate to limit that ability. And also they want to change the legal status of the opinions issued by the legal advisors in various ministries. Right now, the court rules those legal opinions to be legally binding on the government.
And while the coalition has the votes to advance legislation to limit the Supreme Court, the court still has the power to overturn legislation.
And you have a government which is exclusively right-wing. The right wing wants to advance laws that will change the nature of the country along the lines of its political policies. And an activist left-leaning Supreme Court is actually there to overturn the policies of the right wing.
Trayman says judicial reform isn't Netanyahu's top priority.
It takes a distant fourth, I would say, to the issue of a nuclear Iran, to the issue of expanding the circle of peace with the Abraham Accords, and particularly with countries like Saudi Arabia, and curbing the rapidly increasing cost of living here in Israel.
Trayman believes Netanyahu will be cautious about the reforms, but in Israel, it's hard to predict the future.
We've been in a political circus here for a period of several years with the consecutive elections and now the judicial reform protest.
The Biden administration is reportedly pursuing a new informal deal with Iran to prevent a nuclear crisis. But experts warn the U.S. risks losing standing in the Middle East unless it gets tough against the Islamic regime. Since Ayatollah Khomeini came to power in Iran during the 1979 Islamic Revolution, Tehran has had one goal.
What's driving them is the fundamentalist creed and willingness to restore Ali, or the true heir of Muhammad as they see him, or the founding father of Shiite Islam, into the dominant force in the Middle East. So from day one, from square one, they said, we want to take over the Middle East and export the revolution.
Or Issachar of the Israel Defense and Security Forum says Iran is taking a multi-dimensional approach to close in on the Middle East.
They are driving sort of a pincer movement where you got both the G to G level, government to government, between the Iranian regime and Jordan, Egypt, and now the Saudis.
Then there's the regime's proxy network.
That is to say, the Hamas, Hezbollah, all of these are re-legitimized around the Middle East.
Issachar says the positive wave from the Abraham Accords that Israel's been riding has crested and momentum is shifting back.
You have the leader of Iran saying the balance of power around the world has changed, and now everybody's coming to us. Why has that happened? Because of a vacuum and lack of American leadership.
And that vacuum could include the Saudis, Jordanians, and Egyptians, because while those countries share no love for Iran, they could be at risk without American guarantees.
Israel is looking at the Middle East. Balance of power is concerned because we're counting on an Israeli-Arab-American partnership, sort of a NATO of the Middle East against Iran. We actually are worried that the sort of the temptation to secure one's future sort of insurance policy vis-a-vis Tehran will drive the Arabs back to Iran, while we want them on our side and on the U.S. side.
Yisakar says Israel does not see those in the Middle East going in the right direction.
Israel is looking at it. It's super worried. I think what's interesting for the U.S. to know is that U.S. interests in the Middle East are in great peril.
And while the Biden administration verbally supports the Abraham Accords, actions speak louder than words, especially in the Middle East.
What we need is a clear American, credible military threat against Iran. We need strong investments in the region. We need military guarantees.
That's the kind of strength the Middle East saw under President Trump.
You got a president who visits Riyadh and then Israel and then sort of hails and sort of summons the entire Arab world and Israel together behind him.
He says Israel feels a disinterest from Washington that needs to change.
While Israel and Washington are the real answer, are the sort of insurance policy for the future. At the end of the day, the Arab world, they care about their own survival. These leaders want to survive and they want to preserve their own national interests first. They need sort of the stable wall to lean on.
Israel ramped up its military operations against Iranian-backed terror groups in the West Bank, using an attack helicopter to target a terrorist, which hasn't happened there for 20 years. That followed a deadly terror attack in a restaurant and gas station that left 4 Israelis dead in biblical Judea and Samaria. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu gave a firm response after the killings.
I want to tell all those who seek to harm us, all options are open. We'll continue to fight terror with all our might, and we will win.
Coming up, a horrific terror attack shocked the nation and tore his family apart. Hear from Rabbi Leo D. when we come back. This past April, the D family from Efrat suffered unimaginable loss when terrorists killed Lucy D and her daughters, Maya and Karin. Rabbi Leo D amazed the world with his grace as he donated his wife's organs to 4 patients in need and spoke words of healing.
If we differentiate between good and evil, then we can all help make this world a better place. Do it for your soul. Do it for the souls of Maya, Rena, and Lucy D. Do it for all of humanity. And do it now. It has never been more urgent.
We had the privilege of speaking with Rabbi D recently to hear how he and his 3 remaining children are doing as they walk through the process of rebuilding their lives. Here's part 1 of Chris Mitchell's interview.
Rabbi D, it's a pleasure to be with you, an honor to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
First of all, our condolences for your loss. Tell us how you and your family are doing right now.
Up and down. So that's to be expected, and moments of tearfulness and strangely moments of joy.
A lot of people were so impressed here in Israel and around the world at your grace during your incredible loss. Where did that come from?
It comes from studying emunah, which is faith, for many years, and actually teaching about it on occasion as well as a rabbi, and understanding that we have to look at the good and not at the bad. And if you look at the good, it's infinite. And if you look at the bad, it's limited. In our case, it was very great, but it is limited.
And what was the reaction after the loss of Lucy and Rena and Maya?
Absolutely incredible, Chris. The whole community gathered around us. We had 10,000 people or more coming to the Shiva, which is the week of mourning. And on the way to the funeral, the streets were lined with people. It must have been thousands of people came out with Israeli flags to greet us and to show support.
And what was your message you mentioned this before in one of your interviews, to U.S. rabbis?
So I had the pleasure of 2 great U.S. rabbis, Rabbi Ephraim Goldberg, Rabbi Shai Shechter, coming from Florida and from New Jersey. And I said to them, when are you going to come to Israel, to live in Israel and bring your communities? Because, the ingathering of the exiles is something that has been written about in the prophets, something that we pray for 3 times a day, and they're not coming, particularly from America. So I know that these rabbis feel their role is to be in America as long as there's a community there. But I said, if your community is waiting for you and you're waiting for your community, I said, it's never going to happen. So, you better come here. And Rabbi Riskin, when he came to Efrat from Lincoln Square Synagogue in 1982, he came with 8 families, and now Efrat is over 15,000 people. Mm-hmm. So I said to them, if you could bring 8 families, and these rabbis could bring 50 families, you could have a community of 20,000 within 10 years.
Yeah. Why did you and Lucy make the decision to bring your family here?
We came here originally when I came to study rabbinics under Rabbi Riskin, mm-hmm. And we spent 4 years here, and then we went back to England for 6 years. The plan was to go back for good, but Lucy woke up one morning a year after we'd go back to England and said, we have to buy a house in Efrat, we have to sell a house in England, we've got to bring up kids here because it's the only place to bring up Jewish kids is in Israel. Mm. And she was right. It's a place where the kids are brought up by the community, not just by you. Wonderful, wonderful families here, and they make a very good impression on the kids, and they have tremendous values. What was your experience like living here in the front? Or what has been your experience? It's a beautiful place to be, wonderful neighbors, and the kids particularly. It's a kids' town because most families have 5 kids or so, and the age of the kids was pretty much the same in each neighborhood. And they're literally in and out of the house with their friends the whole time, and they're out in the evenings till late, and we don't worry about them because it's a sort of gated community, mm-hmm. so it's perfectly safe. Yeah, that's probably not the perception many people have about a quote-unquote settlement. No, well, the impressions are completely wrong when it comes to settlements. We actually share our local Walmart, which is called Rami Levi, with the local Palestinian towns and Bethlehem. So it's Area C, and I buy my tomatoes next to a Palestinian woman in full Palestinian dress, mm-hmm. and the workers are a mixture of Jews and Arabs who work together, and that's our reality. Mm-hmm. And how did your Palestinian neighbors react to your loss? I actually received the most emotional WhatsApp messages from my Palestinian friends in tears. I think they felt twice as bad as my Jewish friends, because not only they felt my pain, but they had their own pain that it was caused by a Palestinian. And that was a tremendous pain for them as well. I had them coming into the house here during the Shiva, during the 7 days of mourning, secretly through the back door, coming and visiting me in the back room because they didn't want to be seen by anyone captured on camera.
Up next, more from our interview with Rabbi D, how his family is surviving the unthinkable. We continue now with the second part of our interview with Rabbi D.
Can you explain that dynamic? Because a lot of people may not understand that Palestinians may on a personal level want to reach out, but because of the situation, it's very dangerous for them. So the situation in the Middle East is different to how people perceive it. But as you know, Chris, there's only one country that's actually democratic and free in the Middle East. That's that little green dot, that's Israel. The red countries here have no human rights. These data is from Freedom House, which is the international standard for measuring human rights. So the only free country is Israel. If you blow it up, you can see the Palestinian Authority is red and Gaza is red. So there's really, Lebanon is partially free, so it's yellow. And the rest of the 200 million Arabs in the region live in fascist regimes where they have no freedom of expression, no freedom of religion, and no freedom to vote for their governments. So the reality is very different to how people perceive it. The Palestinians are being oppressed by their leadership, by Hamas and Fatah. They would do anything to be under Israeli leadership, but because of the Oslo Accords, the two have been separated up to now, and that's really caused tremendous tension in the Palestinian society. Yeah, you were talking about this with CNN 3 times apparently, and one interview with Christian Amanpour described the situation as a shootout between the Palestinian terrorists and your wife and 2 daughters. How did you react to that?
So, of course, we were tremendously upset, I and the kids, to be accused of our family being terrorists. Then we had 2 other interactions, as you say, with CNN, both of which made me feel like I was the terrorist and the terrorist somehow was the victim. And I think this is endemic in the CNN reporting, and so we are planning to take them to court, and the planning for that is currently underway.
Mm. And how did your life change after this in terms of, being a public spokesman?
My life's changed 180 degrees from being a maths teacher and very sort of quiet and under the radar about 3 months ago. And now I'm frequently being interviewed, and I have a number of different projects that I'm working on. Yeah, I still would never choose to be in this position.
Yeah. Talk about what happened right after the loss of your wife, Lucy.
A couple of interesting things happened. First of all, we were invited to Beilinson Hospital to visit 3 of the recipients. The lady who received Lucy's heart, Lital, was sitting on the chair, and my daughter Karen was listening to her heart through a stethoscope. And that photograph went viral across the world. Apparently, it's only in Israel, or pretty much only in Israel, where they introduced the recipient to the donors. Mm-hmm. And therefore, although in Israel this is quite common for this type of thing to happen.
A remarkable story. A lot of Christians have seen your story, read your story, mourned with you. How can people be praying? How can Christians be praying for you and your family?
I think they could be praying for shalom. Mm-hmm. We would appreciate internal shalom for us and for the family, the ability to be able to deal with the conflicting emotions, and also for world shalom as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What would be your message to Israelis, to people around the world?
So this year, Israel celebrated its 75th anniversary. And I think 75 is a very significant number for Israel, because 25 is 1 generation, 25 years, and 75 is 3 generations. And in Jewish law, when something happens 3 times, it's as if it happened forever. And so Israel's now here 75 years, 3 generations, we're actually here forever. There's no doubt now that Israel is stable and it's going to last for the next few thousand years without any problem whatsoever. Mm-hmm. The moment that Israel gets to 75, we break out the box and we become more of a light unto the nations. And I think that's the time we're in now.
And a fulfillment of what the prophet said thousands of years ago?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I think that we see them one by one coming true. The ingathering of the exiles.
Right. Rabbi Agdi, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Very much.
Still ahead, plans to build Israel's own Silicon Valley in the Negev desert. Why the creators say it's a fulfillment of prophecy. In the heart of an Israeli desert, a new project is on the drawing board to help make the desert bloom. As Chris Mitchell reports, planners believe it could be a part of fulfilling prophecy.
And they will come to Israel and be birthed and grow out of Israel, and the nations will be blessed by this one place.
That blessing is the goal of the Negev High-Tech Project, an ambitious plan to create an Israeli Silicon Valley in the city of Arad.
Israel is known as a startup nation, and I believe there's yet to come some world-changing startups from this place in the area of food and agriculture, water, technologies, communications, national security things that are being developed now that we already are aware of in all of these areas.
Arad is on the edge of the Negev Desert, about a 2-hour drive south of Jerusalem. CBN News joined 3 men there who are part of the project. This now undeveloped land is the site of the project. Former Knesset member Robert Ilatov, an immigrant from the former Soviet Union, leads the effort.
It will be the anchor of this city, educational anchor, research anchor, and of course economic anchor, industrial center for startup companies.
Ilatov says this new movement needs a fresh wind of support.
It's important for many people out of Israel to support Israel, to support the new Zionism, the settlement of the Jewish in this land, to establish and to promote technologies and academy and research and many other fields.
The project would transform the city of 30,000, and Ilatot believes it will become a magnet for young Jews to immigrate to Israel.
But if you can bring them something interesting, something challenging, they will come. Not for money. They want a challenge. People want to do new things. They want to do smart things. Jews will come to this place if we will do some interesting place for them. And of course, we will do it with God's help.
The organizers of the Negev High-Tech project see it as part of the prophetic restoration of the land of Israel described by the prophet Ezekiel.
I believe this is a prophetic fulfillment of Ezekiel 36. God does these things by the power of His own name and who He is. And His Word prophesied this would happen. And so God uses people, and I believe that God chose certain people to come here to initiate this project.
Ezekiel 36 says in part, "The desolate land shall be tilled instead of lying desolate in the sight of all who pass by. So they will say, this land that was desolate has become like the Garden of Eden, and the wasted, desolate, and ruined cities are now fortified and inhabited."
This is a historically strategic, prophetically strategic moment, and I believe Arad plays a major role in that.
Pastor Randy Burke's New Life Church in Venice, Florida, supports the project.
To be here now in Arad, witnessing fulfillment, prophetic word from Old Testament and New Testament, and to have the privilege, the honor to sow into that, not just with finance, but with heart. That's the world to me right now, because I want to be where God's doing His big thing to honor His word and honor His people.
The project is bringing Jews and Christians together.
Now is a time where we stand with our brothers. We serve the same God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And so we stand against any delegitimization against the state of Israel. We stand against BDS. We stand against anti-Semitism. And we thank the Lord for our Jewish brothers who gave us the Word of God. And so we're here to gather with them and see the land prosper and grow. Ezekiel 36 gives us a very clear picture of what's happening.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Arad in the Negev Desert.
Well, that's all for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can follow us on social media, and you can also access CBN content through our CBN apps and email blasts. And remember, the God who's watching over Israel and you and me neither slumbers nor sleeps. I'm Julie Stahl. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.